Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I want my mom to transfer the deeds of her house to me and put her in a home. This was the opening sentence to a phone call I recently had with a member of the public. To get to me, she has made it through multiple perplexed colleagues from across the charity and legal sectors, and it had been sent to me to fathom. Your basic hospital pass of your problem now before hiding. The young lady continues with the exclamation, "Young lady, I'm just too tired of looking after my mom. I need to live a life now, and I have been doing it for so long. She won't pay for anything or let me bring the fun home. I just can't do it anymore, so I think it's only right that she gives me the house and moves into a home. She's only like 15 years max until she dies. OP caring can be difficult, especially when you are feeling the pressure. Let's see what support might be available to you." Young lady, I don't want support. I just want her out of the house so I can get on with my life. OP, many people caring get to this stage in their caring journey. With the right support, things can get better. If the amount of care needed is more, then that is something you will need to discuss as a family. However, I can give you information on the process. Young lady, but you can tell her to give me her house? OP, no. Young lady, but you're supposed to help me. OP, unfortunately, I am prevented from actually advising on legal interpersonal monetary elements. I can only advise on benefits and grants. Side note, I was very much thinking fortunately at this point. Young lady, what does that mean? OP, I can't be involved in a decision like that. I can give you all the information on how it works and... Young lady, what is the point of talking to you then? You're useless. OP, I'm sorry I'm not able to do this. How about you tell me a little about what type of condition your mom has? Young lady, what do you mean? OP, what type of illness does your mom have? Young lady, she doesn't. OP, how old is she? Young lady, 47. Silence.
Literally 20 seconds of silence.
OP, please, can you confirm that your mom doesn't have an illness like cancer or has a disability like dementia or maybe needs physical help like lifting or a wheelchair? Young lady, no. OP, does your mom work? Young lady, yeah, she works down the bakery. How else does she cover the bills? OP, please excuse the intrusion, but can I ask how old you are? Young lady, 22. OP, and do you get any extra help? Young lady, I get ISA and UEC and the like. OP, incredibly confused. Don't you think your mom will mind being made to move out of her home? Young lady, she's getting old. She will be so much happier with my gran. OP, I need to advise you that what you are purposing isn't legal. Young lady, it will be fine. I'm sure my mom won't mind. OP, I really can't advise you any further. Maybe I should speak to your mom? Young lady, no, I will try someone else. And the call ended. No goodbyes or tantrums. Just a matter of fact, you aren't giving me it, so someone else will. The experience put away as one of the weirder phone interactions I've had, something that could have come straight out of Shameless. I often wondered what happened to the entitled young lady and her poor mum. I now have an answer to this as it came through the grapevine recently. I literally cannot say where, as it would reveal certain people in the same way this has been anonymized so the characters can't be identified either. Thank you to my rather bemused colleague who helped me get this signed off as anonymous enough. The young lady got some more lawyer to create papers for her mum to sign over the rights. The mum, unsurprisingly horrified, said no, and the young lady threatened her with a knife. Fortunately, authorities were called, and the young lady is now serving 3 to 5 years for a variety of crimes, including extortion. Honestly, had this been written by Euripides, there would probably be another complex, named after a Greek poet. You boy, I had no idea people could be this unaware. My spouse's childhood friend announced a year ago that they were coming to our country and intended to stay with us. We tentatively said okay. Recently, we found out that my mother requires a significant medical procedure, will be hospitalized for a few days to a week and recovering with us after. The 3 of us live together as roommates with bills split equally, essentially. This procedure falls smack dab in the middle of spouse's friend's trip. I told my spouse to tell their friend about the circumstances and that this would severely impact any sightseeing plans we had, and I would be out for the duration of the trip between work and taking care of my mom. My spouse's friend, despite driving for many years in their home country, did not want to drive while here and expected us to ferry them around. I had hoped that, like most normal people, the friend would pick up on the fact that this is not a good time to visit us and make alternate arrangements. An example, drive a car, but instead they said, well, as long as I get to see X while here, I'm fine. I should probably explain that my spouse is a very new driver and just got their license a month ago and has little experience driving freeways. They are terrified of these. I do most of the driving as a result while they're getting comfortable. Said friend arrived on Monday and since then, expected to be picked up from the airport, a 2-hour drive each way, and spouse, the new driver, had to drive in horrific traffic to get them. I was busy with appointments for my mom and work. Did not offer gas money to my spouse for driving all that way to get them. Expects to be driven to sightsee each day. Again, never offers gas money or pays for anything. When in our house, has the TV up loud in the one room I enjoy hanging out in, outside of our bedroom. Doesn't pick up after themselves. Has not offered to pay for a single meal. Does not even pay for their own meals or drinks, save for one meal, so now we're paying to feed another adult. Should also mention that this friend has money, so it is not even a case of not having money. When taken to sightsee, never says thank you and even complained about one place my spouse took them to. Takes long showers without even asking if we need the bathroom before. Does not offer to help with anything in the house. Refuses to arrange for their own sightseeing and is entirely dependent on my spouse, who I'd like to have around to support me during this stressful time, but do not want to be around the friend, so therefore I don't get my spouse. Lectures my spouse on the politics and social norms of our country, despite the fact that my spouse has lived here for 4 years and knows more than said friend does. Friend is a total social drain to be around and only wants to talk about themselves and their thoughts complaints. Friend has not once said thank you to us for hosting or driving or paying for their meal. Friend is staying for 13 days total, all with us, all with the expectation of us driving them. I have social anxiety, spouse knows this, and have had to give up my 2 favorite spaces in the whole house so the friend has a place to sleep and a place to hang out when they're not in the bedroom. I work from home and had to relocate my work setup, previously in the guest room, to another part of the house which was and is a major inconvenience as work is crazy right now, and I'm having to balance taking care of my mom with that. The last 6 days have been hell and I feel like I have no peace in my own home, especially after a long day of having to be social while working and then having to continue that because of this house guest. The next 6 days will also be hell as this friend simply will not take a hint, and I've got the stress of dealing with my parent who is having a procedure that has a 10th fatality rate, and given her health conditions, complications could happen. Of course, knowing this friend, they probably would not take a hint then either and would probably still expect my spouse to drive them places. As it is, my spouse asked if they and the friend should come up to the hospital to visit my mom. To switch, I said my spouse should, but not if the friend is going to be clinging to them like a sad puppy. I have talked to my spouse, and they agree that the friend is a drain. They're not happy either, but they are trying to stick it out until the friend leaves and have already said the friend will not be allowed to stay here again. It is clear to me that the friend is massively taking advantage of my spouse, and I hate to see it. I'm just flabbergasted that people like this even exist, as every other house guest we've ever had has been considerate, occupies themselves, arranges for their own transportation, and genuinely seems to care about our lives as we care about theirs. This friend is one of the most entitled people I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. Edit. Just want to clarify a few things. 1. I am not paying for anything for the friend. I put my foot down. My spouse is paying from his own funds. 2. I told my spouse that I thought their friend should make an alternate arrangement after I found out about my mom's procedure, and that I was in no place mentally or emotionally to have someone staying with us. 3. I told my spouse that at the very least friend needs to drive themselves, not put all that burden on spouse, and I really need my spouse to be there to support me at the hospital. I did try to cancel this friend coming here, but it fell on deaf ears. Edit 2. Thank you everyone for your responses and tough love. It gave me the courage to finally stand up for myself in this situation, rather than just shutting up and taking it. My spouse now better understands how they screwed up and how to fix it. We have a plan to move forward. Things aren't perfect, but I feel more optimistic. There will be an update post, probably tomorrow, of what happened in the fallout. Update, update. People were asking for an update to this debacle, so here it is. After the original post and seeing the comments, I got even more angry at the situation. I felt very hurt, disappointed by my spouse's inability to put the needs of his spouse above a friend he rarely sees in person. I felt like I was not the priority, and neither was my mom in a very vulnerable time. I simply could not tolerate the situation anymore. Everyone's responses shook some sense into me and made me determined to not be a doormat any longer. Because I was exhausted and had already told my spouse of my feelings, I essentially gave my spouse the cold shoulder. I avoided interacting with them and the friend. I refused to buy any food, even for my spouse. I looked after my mom, spent lots of time with her, and made plans. When we finally talked later that day, I told spouse that I was getting a hotel room 5 miles from the hospital and would be staying there until I felt comfortable in my own home. If that was several days, so be it. They asked if I was doing it to avoid them. I said no. I was simply done with the stress of the situation and did not care to be around the friend. By the next morning, I think they finally realized the gravity of the situation and just how upset I was. They offered to help the friend to fly home sooner. I said, why is the only option you driving them everywhere or them having to fly home? Are they that incapable that they cannot get a hotel and their own transportation? Spouse mentioned the cost of a hotel, to which I said I know friend has money. They can afford it, and why travel to another country if they had no money to pay for accommodation? I told spouse that until friend is gone, I'm staying at a hotel down the road from the hospital. I told spouse that I felt incredibly hurt and angry that I was not the priority in an extremely stressful time in my life. That spouse did not listen when I told them to tell the friend to make other plans than staying with us. That in trying to keep us both happy, spouse deeply hurt me, their partner in life. I told spouse that they were not there for me when I needed them the most and could not as long as they were catering to the friend. Spouse revealed they felt backed into a corner with the friend and like they had to keep us both happy. They also revealed the friend is known for sometimes having tantrums if they don't get their way. I was never told about this until now. Spouse said they talked to the friend about leaving, but still proceeded to drive them all day yesterday out of obligation. Spouse has told me how worried they are about me, but the fact it took this much talk to get them to realize their mistakes, well, I don't know. My mom's surgery yesterday was successful, but it was stressful and ran longer than planned. I was alone in the waiting room as my siblings are all out of state. It was hard, but I'm relieved my mom is recovering well. And yes, I spent the night in a hotel as promised as I was just drained after the long day. Spouse talked to their friend today and broke the news that they could not continue to drive the friend, and that they needed to either fly back sooner or get accommodations elsewhere. My spouse is currently driving the entitled friend to their hotel in another city and is helping them get adjusted by essentially hand-holding them on transportation options. Spouse is still far too kind for their own good. Friend has yet to say thanks or contribute anything financially for all of the things spouse has done. Spouse said now the friend will be gone so you can be happy. I do not know if he meant this to guilt trip me, but it kind of felt that way. Except, I'm not happy. I'm still disappointed it even took this much for my spouse to do the right thing. I am still angry and hurt. I'm hopeful that we can move past this in our relationship as there's a lot of love and support normally. This situation was just a massive F-up and spouse is remorseful, but I do not know how long it will take me to forgive and trust my spouse again to be there for me. I will be talking about it in therapy and will likely ask about marital counseling. Something needs to change and my spouse needs to learn when and how to say no. So yeah, that's the update. I may still do another day or two in the hotel to give myself the time and space to recover from a hellish week and a half. This whole experience has taught me to stick up for myself and not allow others to walk all over me. Thank you, fellow Redditors, for giving me the strength to put my needs above people-pleasing. Backstory: I own a towel company and part of our contracts are impounds and repossessions. This story is from late fall 2019. Note, because I know people are going to ask, I carry a Chris Vector in my truck and a SIG P320 pistol I carry on me. Thankfully, neither was needed this day. Alright, so it's story time again, and this is by far one of my favorites from years of working in this field. Karen's car went up for repossession, and we received the paperwork, let's say, September 29th. By October 3rd, I'm sneaking by her house regularly looking for the car at all hours of the night and day, but can't seem to find it. Finally, just before Halloween Viola. It's in the driveway. It's 11:30-ish at night, and I just happened to swing in on the way home from dinner with my wife, and we happen to have taken the wrecker to dinner with us. Leaving the truck and my wife about 300 meters away, I grab my flashlight and clipboard with the repo order on it and sneak up to the car humming the theme from an old Tom Cruise movie. I do this every time, all the time. Hey, would you look at that? It's Karen's car. Karen's car is rear-wheel drive and nose in, so all I have to do is call the wife, have her back the wrecker in, and we will be gone in less than 30 seconds. Wife turns all the lights off and lowers the stinger as low as possible before backing up the driveway. Hits the switch that cuts the reverse lights and backup beeper, so we can go full stealth. The stinger goes under the car perfectly and wife snaps it closed. Now the reason we are here, as wife starts to lift the truck, I hear Karen make her appearance. Karen, what the F do you think you're doing? I look up a small set of stairs directly across the car from me to Karen and see this 50-something woman in a nightie fumbling a shotgun and immediately dive for cover behind the car in front of me. Karen, swinging the gun out into her left arm to pump around into the chamber, slams down to secure the slide, but the gun keeps going. Karen has dropped the gun. It's now rolling down the stairs. I'm peeking over the car, watching the shotgun go end over end, bouncing down these stairs. The gun goes off just before hitting the ground, and immediately after the bang, I hear whistling and feel the car I'm pressed against drop to a weird angle. Karen has just shot her, now repossessed car. Karen, you effing idiots damaged my car. Wife is calling police. I've pulled my sidearm. Me, get on the ground now. Karen is also now calling the police and stating that there are 2 men attempting to steal her car and that we have damaged it. Karen doesn't say anything about her gunshot or even notice the fact I'm holding a gun. Karen goes back into her house. I quickly throw 2 straps onto the rear wheels of the car so it won't fall off of the tow truck as the front passenger tire is now flat. The wife stepped out to cover me with another gun from the cabin of the truck. As fast as possible, I jumped in the passenger seat, and the wife drove 2 blocks away as we waited for police. I didn't see Karen again until it was time for court, but it turns out that Karen's not allowed to own a firearm and the gun was stolen. Karen was charged with attempted armed robbery, possession of a firearm while committing a felony assault, malicious destruction of property. Her own car we were repossessing, and possession of a firearm by a felon. In court, Karen pleaded guilty to the charges and was ordered to pay restitution to the bank as well as a 15-year jail term. In small claims, we recovered a total of 16 damages due to mental stress. Please, if you ever have a car repossessed, just let it go. Even if you can get it back before it's processed, don't endanger anyone's lives. Especially your own. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. My 39 female, older brother, 42 male, has always felt the world owes him something. I'll keep this as short as I can, but it's a doozy. We'll call my brother Twat for our story. Was started selling drugs in middle school. By age 18, he got caught with 50 G meth, 1 PD weed, 100 painkillers, and a gun. This was before the recession in 2008, and my parents were doing well, although my mom, an RN, had recently undergone major surgeries on her neck and back, forcing to retire 1 year before she could collect pension. What fully expected and got my parents to pay for the best attorney around. The retainer fee alone was $20K. What by this time was 19 years old was sentenced to 3 months in boot camp that was usually only for people under 17, despite facing 50 years in prison. It turned out that ATF worked with the judge to give him a light sentence so they could use him as bait to get to the rest of his gang. When he was released, I told my parents he has a major methaheroin addiction and needs help. They refused to see that their only son could do this. We started using and selling hard drugs, meth, coke, heroin, the works, literally the day after his release. I saw it with my own eyes. The feds built a case on him for 2 years before surrounding my parents' house and arresting Twat again, this time for trafficking meth, heroin, weed, conspiracy on all of these counts, and felony gun possession. We lived on the border of 2 states, which is why it was a federal crime was considered trafficking. They arrested 4 other members of his gang at the same time, all in collecting over 2,150,000 firearms, nearly 1,000 Gs of meth, about the same in heroin, a lot of weed. I don't know how much, but was facing 90 years. This was after the recession. Dad lost his business in 2009, and Mom was not working. They ended up filing for bankruptcy that year. So, to bond Twat out, they put their home up as collateral. Do you think Twat intended to show up for court? No. Twat determined he was going to flee to Mexico and let my parents lose their home and be out on the street. While he was out, he still sold drugs and would borrow money from my parents using any excuse under the sun. One of the times he borrowed $500 my mom pulled out of her retirement. Showed up at their house showing off his shiny new drone. He had 3. My mom mentioned the $500. Twat lost his shit, yelling that she was a selfish bitch and that he doesn't have a damn mother. That if she loved him, she would find the money to pay for an attorney for him. My parents couldn't afford one this time around, and he had a public defender. My mother has broken her back for us kids over the years and would have gladly served Twat's sentence for him if they'd let her. His words cut through so deeply she still bears the scars. I had moved to a different city than my parents by this time. About a week before his court date, Twat had the audacity to show up at my house and demand I let him stay there. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life because at the time I loved my brother, but I called the feds and told them where he was. At the end of the day, I couldn't stand the thought of my blameless parents being homeless due to Twat's actions. I started hating him for the position he put me in and the decision he forced on me to betray either him or my parents. Edited to include this paragraph, Twat made sure to tell everyone in town and all of his friends that I snitched on him. I got threatening calls constantly for months and even a few death threats. I think my saving grace was that I lived 2.5 hours away from our hometown. Twat ends up being sentenced to 20 years. The only time he would call my parents was when he needed money. A couple of years in, he called my mom on Mother's Day last May. I happened to be at their house and heard her crying and saying she wished she could help, but they just don't have the money. I can hear Twat through the phone yelling at her to shut the F up. He needs the goddamn money. She's a piece of shit and he hopes she died. He hung up on her before I could snatch the phone away. That night, my mother took 60 Valiums, her whole bottle. I woke up at about 4 to find her unresponsive on the kitchen floor. Paramedics said if it were only even 5 minutes longer, we would have lost her. She ended up with temporary brain damage and had to stay in a psych ward for 5 days for evaluation. She refuses to blame Twat for what she did, even though it never would have happened if it weren't for his words. At this point, Dad and I completely cut Twat off. I effing hate the thought of him. He refuses to acknowledge what happened and hasn't even apologized for the things he said to her. In fact, he's cussed her out at least one other time that I know of since this happened. My mom is the only one who will still speak with him. Twat always goes on pity-me trips because Dad and I won't have anything to do with him, so Mom tries to get us to talk to him. I told her that I will never forgive him for what he did and that I have nothing to say to him. I wrong for this?
I hate my mom has to listen to his guilt trips, but I can't stand the thought of having a conversation with him, much less a civil one.
If you're still with me, thank you for listening. This shit weighs so heavy on me. It feels a bit better to share my thought. I appreciate any feedback on if I should speak to Twat for my mom's sake. This made me super uncomfortable, and I have to tell this to everyone. I got so uncomfortable I cried. For context, I am 20 years old, and I am on the autism spectrum. We don't know what I have, but we know I have something, so my brain works differently than others. I've also been working at McDonald's for 6 years now. EC stands for Entitled Coworker. ECD stands for Entitled Coworker's Dad. GM stands for Great Manager. I love her, in a platonic way, of course. OM stands for Other Manager. She's also great. I don't blame her for what she did, but it didn't help. This day started off great, awesome. Actually, I had tons of sleep and got into work on time after some lunch. I worked the night shift, usually 3:10, but it's 2:10 today, and was put into first booth as usual. Nothing happens for the first 50 minutes, but at around 2:50, 10 minutes before EC clocks out, he comes to the back mocking me after I take an order. EC, 4:27. Me, I'm sorry. EC, nothing. And he starts to walk away. For more context, this guy messes around too much, and the jokes he does are not funny and just are not needed in a workplace, not the time or place. Think cringy, inappropriate crap like sexual jokes and mocking, stuff like that. Me, please don't do that, dude. I don't like that. EC proceeds to mock me again when you are out of the first window. I grumble and just let it slide. I have work to do, and I don't see him for a while. I take an order. I think it's just a sweet tea, not too sure, and I look at the screen to pull up his order. While holding my hand out for the money, something simple, and I feel something soft. I look to them and see a CD looking at me with me touching a damn dirty butt sock. It has crap on it, and it's a damn sock. ACD has a dumbass smirk, and EC is laughing his butt off, and I turn around and immediately wash my hands. I have a blank face, but I'm dying inside. I walk back, take the money, and start to talk in a harsh tone. Me, don't do that. Don't do that ever again. ECD, duded clean, didn't effing look clean. Me, that doesn't matter. Please don't do that. Then OM comes in at the end, and there were mints in the first booth. She comes in, throwing the mints into the car, not knowing what just transpired. OM, for you, points at ECD, and you, EC's name. EC, yo, my name, should have one of those. This line broke me. The fact his dad even handed me a sock, thinking it was funny and not even telling him not to say that, which clearly isn't a good thing to say. Dear God, that parent is horrible. No wonder EC is so entitled. I hold out for a while, focusing on work and trying to not let it get to me, but eventually it was starting to get too much, and I call over GM and tell her what happened, and she hears me and believes me in a heartbeat. I don't lie about crap like this. I don't like to cause trouble. And when I tell her what happened, it got to me. I broke down. I was so goddamn uncomfortable about holding a random butt sock. I had to sit down and take a small break, cry in the corner. OM eventually comes over and wonders what's wrong. She's mostly Spanish, so I use Google Translate to tell her what happened, and she also agrees with me that EC went too damn far. She tells everyone else what happened, and I get back to work. Nothing else happens, but what disturbs me the most is that the whole dad thought it was funny and a good idea to hand me a damn sock. Just because it's clean doesn't effing matter. That's so disgusting. If it isn't obvious, I hate EC now. He went too far, and his jokes aren't funny. I want them to stop, and if they won't, I know his butt is getting fired. Update 1. GM told me that if it continues to tell her, so yay, it should stop now. I'll update here if anything else happens. Update 2. I told my dad, and he doesn't support me. He goes on and on about how he had it worse and how it's not the end of the world. When I needed him to get through my pain, he just pushes it away like it's nothing. Nothing? Update 3. Had a talk with Dad, and I'm feeling much better now, at the expense of coming into work a little late, but I can deal with that. Update 4. So, I haven't been completely honest with everyone here. You guys don't know much of my past, and I think I'm ready to tell. I am a 20-year-old male, and I've recently lost my mother a year ago on April 2nd. She was only 40 and had alls for so long until she couldn't handle it anymore and died in my dad's arm. Then in December last year, my beloved cat Alfred died on my bed, and it's been a struggle sleeping ever since. He was my support animal, and I've been devastated ever since he left me. He helped me through Mom's death every single night, and he sighs. He was my favorite cat, even if I wasn't the best owner. My life has completely changed. I now work 5 days a week. I'm finally getting onto my license after a school which ruined my confidence, and I'm finally starting to look after myself. I've been miserable for years, ever since Mom was bedridden, and my pain has been building up more and more. And when I just wanted to do my job and just get it over with, touching a disgusting sock just broke me. I'm feeling much better now after a talk with Dad. It was a little harsh, but I needed it badly. I was suffering in bed, wanting validation that I never needed. Thank you all for the kind words. I'm meeting EC on Wednesday, and I have a plan. Gonna poke the bear a little bit. We'll update here what happens. Update 5. So EC actually apologized to me earlier, but gave a half-butt excuse for what he did. It was an impulse. Jesus, I'm going to keep an eye on him, but so far he's been behaving. This is an old story, But I was reminded of this when I read a Gen X is the worst post. I am 36 female, but this happened when I was 18. Things may seem off, but remember this was the early 2000s. That time was a crazy time. For this, I will call my boss main boss EB for entitled boss and second boss NB for nice boss. When I was 18, my 37 male, EB was a tyrant. He lived life on easy mode. College was cheap for him and he didn't have to pay because his dad could cover it. His business was even started on him having advantages over his employees in life. He couldn't see that, though, because he felt he worked for it. He did not get how his millennial employees were struggling with what we were paid. We were getting paid $5 an hour, which I know for a fact was below minimum wage at the time. I didn't complain, though, because I needed a job. Living in NY is expensive, but it is hard to leave NY when your family is broke. At the time, I just started college. He knew that and agreed to me having Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, so I can go to school and have at least one day to myself. I needed to save towards paying off student loans and eventually getting my own place. My parents were not bad, but could not afford paying for me to go to college and covering basic expenses. Lucky for me, I did get a scholarship and grants, but it did not cover everything. So I needed a job. Part of my money went to household expenses and my needs, along with attempting to save for my future. So I got this job. I thought since my boss agreed to this and was younger, I wouldn't have issues. I thought it would be okay, but I was wrong. My EB worked the younger employees to the bone. We only had 10-minute breaks for meals and barely got any time for ourselves. Bathroom trips were even timed. He had no sympathy. Even if a woman was pregnant, we were scared of upsetting him, because he would go from friendly to crazy at the drop of a dime. One girl who worked there quit, she wanting more than one day to bury her grandmother. He told her, "Why are you crying? Your grandma was old. When I lost my grandparents, I didn't even take a day off. I just kept working. Kids now are too sensitive. The real world isn't going to cuddle you, sweetheart. One day or you're fired," she tossed her name badge at him and left. That girl was brave. I noticed that even with my regular hours, I was struggling to get by. So I looked for small gigs I can do on my work days that wouldn't conflict with my work hours. So I found one that worked. I worked part-time at a small craft store in my neighborhood. It was after my main job hours and by my house. My main job was a like 711, by the way. I kept it hush because I knew if this guy knew I was working somewhere else, he would get mad that I requested 3 days off during the week. However, a regular of our store let it slip while she thanked me. He knew now that I was working at the craft store as well. So the EB had a meltdown. During my break, he called me to the office. He demanded I quit my second job to be on call for my main one. He wanted me to work longer hours, but wouldn't give me a raise or overtime to compensate for the extra time I might have been working, which was not guaranteed, by the way. I needed guaranteed money. So what incentive did I have to quit my second job? I needed extra money. My NB was paying me $6.50 for 3 hours, 4 days a week. When I said no, I need the job for basic expenses, my EB said, "Don't you live with your parents?" Kind of pathetic. What expenses do you have? When I was your age, I already had my first home and was paying a mortgage. You just work here and go to college. Wait till you have to pay a mortgage and take care of kids. So you either quit or you're fired. I was annoyed. He was not paying me extra. He was not entitled to my time. He used up my only break to tell me to be broke because he thinks I'm leeching off my parents. I said, "No, EB, I will not quit if you aren't giving me steady hours or a pay increase. Why should I leave my second job?" I don't know why he didn't get, I am an adult. I had to pay towards my student loans, my phone, transportation, and food. He had no sympathy, and after that shift, he fired me. He expected me to bend to him, but I didn't. He was an a-hole and made my life hell even after I was fired. I couldn't even put that place on my resume cause if I did, he would tell potential employers I am lazy and stole food. So I put the NB55 female at the time as my previous employer. She was a much nicer person. I told her what happened. She gave me a little more hours at the craft store, and that helped till the end of the semester. When I was looking for work, she gave me a good recommendation. She was the sweetest woman, or IP Leanne. Not all boomers are amazing, but my NB and my parents were superstars in my eyes. They all helped me have a better life. I had to pause my education because it took a while to get a new job. I needed to save up to continue. Eventually found a better paying job at a clinic. My NB wished me good luck in my future. Years later, I was about 28 and I see this guy's store for sale. I was so happy when I saw that guy's store shut down. I asked around and my old coworker said nobody wanted to work for him because he was such a jerk. He started hiring undocumented workers and got in trouble for that. His wife left him for cheating on her with 20-year-old. He got fined so much he had to sell his home just to cover the fines and alimony. Apparently, he moved in with his parents. I laugh because this guy gave me hell for living with my parents. He was now divorced and living off of his boomer parents. This was hilarious. By then, I was a pastry chef making good money in Manhattan. So the universe was saying, "Here you go, girl." I saw it as karma. I was told I could sue him, but at the time, I really didn't have the time or money to do that. But fate made this man feel it in the end. So I let it all go and moved forward. Now I'm in my own place with my loving partner. I'm almost the same age as my EB was when I was fired. God knows I will never treat kids the way my EB treated me. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.